Welcome to Canadian Justice. I'm Christine Van Geyn, and today we're talking about Canada's Temporary Foreign Workers Program and recently announced changes. The Temporary Foreign Worker Program allows Canadian employers to hire foreign workers to fill temporary jobs when qualified Canadians are not available. Traditionally, we think of this program involving seasonal workers in the agricultural industry, but there are actually many other parts of Canada's economy where temporary foreign workers are used. And the federal government relaxed criteria for this program during the severe post-COVID labor shortage, which led to a dramatic increase in temporary residents. But then in August of this year, the federal government then reversed course and announced changes to the programs to reduce the number of these temporary low-wage workers. How big an increase was there in immigration as a result of the program? And how did it impact Canada's economy? And what will this new rollback mean? Here today to discuss this is immigration lawyer Sergio Karas. Thank you so much for joining me today, Sergio. First, maybe you could give us a sense of exactly how many temporary foreign workers there are in Canada and how much it maybe increased since those changes that were announced relaxing the program in, I believe, 2022.
No, thank you for having me. Well, the figure is a little bit fuzzy, even according to the government, because approximately 3 million temporary workers are in Canada. Now, we have to remember that the temporary foreign worker program encompasses many, many categories, and it can be anywhere from the open work permits that are given to refugee claimants and students in the postgraduate program to work permits that are the result of treaties such as CUSMA, which is the treaty with the United States and Mexico, or CETA, the treaty with the European Union, or the Trans-Pacific Partnership, etc. So the figure is a little bit misleading when we're talking about total numbers. I think what people need to do is to go into the numbers and to see how many temporary workers are there in each category. And the elephant in the room here are the open work permits. And the open work permits are those that are for postgraduate work permits, meaning the students who graduate in Canada, they receive a work permit, but also the refugee claimants and also spouses in sponsorship applications that can also get an open work permit. And there are some other humanitarian categories that are receiving open work permits. Those are the people who can work anywhere. The large number of seasonal agricultural workers, and there are a couple of programs that the government is running. One is called SAWP, SAWP, which is Seasonal Agricultural Workers Program. That is very, very important and has been modified a number of times right during the pandemic, actually. And also they have agricultural stream programs that are also very important. But those are fairly recent programs that came as a result of the pandemic. The South has been around forever, but it has been restructured.
So we've talked about the criteria being, perhaps the right word is relaxed, maybe there's a better word, but the criteria to become eligible as a temporary foreign worker certainly changed post-pandemic. Can you give us any specifics about how those programs changed, in addition to the creation of some of those, it seems like, new programs that you mentioned?
But a lot of the program, many of the programs changed during the pandemic, and as a result of the pandemic, I'll give you an example. The labor market impact assessment, which is the one that employers must use in order to hire a foreign worker who's not in Canada and is not an existing employee, was changed and relaxed as a result of the pandemic in the low wage category. So the previous to the pandemic, the employers were limited to 10% of the labor force in the low wage to be able to hire foreign workers. During the pandemic, that got raised to 20%. So a lot of employers started relying much more on foreign workers. And that is where the rubber meets the road, basically,
Hmm.
because people started complaining about that.
Yeah, now we've seen sort of the pendulum swing back and some of those changes rolled back. Let's talk about that when we come back from commercial break. Welcome back to Canadian Justice, where we're discussing recently announced changes to Canada's temporary foreign worker program by the federal government. So, Sergio, in the last segment, we were talking about the relaxation of the criteria to become eligible as a temporary foreign worker. It seems like the pendulum has swung back. The Trudeau government has now announced uh, rolling back of those relaxed criteria. So, what are the new changes that were just announced?
Well, the main change is the limitation on low skill workers because employers became reliant on low skill labor, and also the government understood, based on the evidence that it has collected, that there has been a tremendous amount of
Can
fraud by
you give me
employers.
an example of a job that might fit into that category, just so people have a clearer idea in their mind of what exactly we're talking about?
Well, for example, a typical job will be working in a fast food restaurant, cooking hamburgers or preparing food, etc. And employers have become reliant on those workers. And unfortunately, there has been a lot of fraud because a lot of unscrupulous and unlicensed individuals were counseling people overseas to uh, to come in under those programs, and also a lot of employers, unscrupulous employers, I should say, created jobs that really were not needed in order to accommodate those individuals, because those individuals overseas were paying 40, 50, $60,000, and then the fees would be split between the employer, the agent, and the person concerned, whose only objective was to come to Canada in order to obtain permanent residency.
Mhm.
So there's been a tremendous amount of abuse, and the government understood that. Also, the government doesn't want employers to be reliant solely on foreign labor, because that creates a foreign labor population that in many cases has no hope of becoming permanent residents, because they don't speak the official languages very well, they don't have the skills, and that creates a whole host of associated problems that when their permits expire, these people tend to go underground and work illegally and
Yeah,
not
so
leave the country.
that's one of the things I'm kind of curious about. If sort of the goal of some people who come here under the temporary foreign worker program, if their goal might be permanent residency, is there actually even a path that exists there to achieve that?
Yes, of course. The goal is always invariably permanent residency for many of the of the individuals. Now, not all the temporary foreign workers are created equal. As I said, there are many, many, many people who come under various treaties, and they are really temporary. So, for example, I have lots and lots and lots of multinational companies as clients that bring in individuals for a very short period of time for specific projects in very highly skilled occupations in engineering, computer science, infrastructure, etc. But those people typically do not stay. They come in, they do their thing, and they leave. Now, in the low end, in the low skill program, that has been an issue, because most of these people come from countries that what we used to call the third world, um, developing countries, and they want to stay, as we say, by hook or by crook. So they come in many times lured by the promises that are being made by unscrupulous agents. They come to Canada, and then they find the situation is very different. But then they themselves, they are looking for ways to remain in Canada through various subterfuges. For example, could be marrying Canadians, having babies, or negotiating with employers to commit fraud and misrepresent the type of occupations in which they are involved.
One of the things that has stood out to me is you've written a column where you say that these rollback changes are not going to be sufficient. Just in a few seconds, maybe you can give us a high level, and then we can talk about it more after the break.
Very simple. It's not sufficient because the number of postgraduate work permits is enormous. It's almost 1 million, and also the number of refugee claimants that is skyrocketing are also getting open work permits. So
Mm-hmm.
all those people are getting work
Let,
permits and they're
let's
clogging the system.
let's take a break and we'll talk about it after. Welcome back to Canadian Justice, where we're discussing recent changes to Canada's temporary foreign worker program. And we're joined by Sergio Karas, who is an immigration lawyer. Now, Sergio, we were in the last segment discussing what the impact of the recent rollback in the relaxation of criteria for low-wage temporary foreign workers would be. Is there anything you want to add to why you think that these changes perhaps don't go far enough?
They don't go far enough because they don't address the main problem. Okay, so what in order for people to understand how the temporary foreign worker program works, there are two segments basically. There is the IMP, which is the International Mobility Program. Those are all the people who are exempt from labor market impact assessments. Typically, they're people who are under treaties or the regulations have exemptions for them. And on the other hand, you have the labor market impact assessment, which is a program where employers have to demonstrate that they have made reasonable efforts to hire Canadians, but they have not been able to find anybody for the position, and therefore they file an application with Service Canada to hire a foreign worker. Those are the two large segments. So a lot of the fraud was centered on the labor market impact assessment program because those are the people who are typically overseas and they're trying to find a way to make it to Canada. And unscrupulous individuals have taken advantage of that. Now, the IMP, which is the International Mobility Program that encompasses a whole bunch of treaties, that cannot be touched because those are part of international obligations that Canada has. The other part of the problem are the open work permits that are given to postgraduate students, international students who have graduated in Canada, and that has been growing like a weed, basically, and to the refugee claimants, that is also skyrocketed. So those account for like half of those temporary workers, probably. And these are the people so when their permits expire, don't want to leave. So this is the issue. The issue is that how many are illegal in Canada? And there is another angle to this. A lot of postgraduate work permit holders, meaning foreign students whose permits are coming to an end, are being counseled by unscrupulous individuals to make refugee claims in order to get an open work permit and extend their stay in Canada for several years until their cases are eventually dismissed or refused because they are not meritorious. So this needs to be addressed. Unless those segments are addressed, the problem is not going to go away. The government can reduce all they want in the labor market impact assessment, they can implement security measures, they can combat fraud, et cetera, but that's not enough unless the largest categories are addressed.
Can you give me a sense of the impact that temporary foreign workers have on Canada's economy? Because I mean, the program is designed to bring in temporary foreign workers when Canadians are not available to do those jobs. And I can think of a lot of examples of industries where that's the case. I mean, agricultural workers, home care workers, nannies, elderly caregivers. And I can see the argument of from industry that they are struggling to fill roles, including in the low wage sort of fast food part of the industry. So what type of how are these treated differently, these different types of temporary foreign workers, and what's the impact, the different impacts they have on the economy?
You're quite right. The temporary foreign workers have a tremendous amount of impact on the economy, and they fill a lot of jobs that are needed in Canada. Healthcare is the best example. Um, the seasonal agricultural program, that is a little bit of a different kettle of fish because it has existed for decades. Um, the problem is that the government had relaxed the criteria for scrutinizing the legitimacy of the jobs that were being offered, and therefore open up the spigot during the pandemic to labor market impact assessments for many people who do not deserve them. So that has flooded the problem, the market.
So is the problem that on the employer side then?
The checks should be done on the employer side to make sure that the job is legitimate, that the fair wage is being paid, that that things kind of are on the up and up.
Mm-hmm.
But during the pandemic and post the pandemic, memos have surfaced
Mm-hmm.
where
Sergio, I'm sorry, we have to go to commercial break, but we'll be right back. Welcome back to Canadian Justice, where we're discussing the temporary foreign worker program in Canada. And we're joined by immigration lawyer Sergio Karas. Sergio, you were saying in the last segment about something that was some internal documents, I guess, that were uncovered post-pandemic related to some unscrupulous behavior, perhaps, during the pandemic related to this program. What do you mean?
Right. What happened was that some emails with instructions have surfaced, and the press has reported on this a couple of weeks ago, where employees of Service Canada, who are responsible for the temporary foreign worker program, were advised to overlook a lot of the security checks that are normal for the program. And there is like a question and answer there in which people were basically pressure to or encourage, let me put it that way, to move files along as quickly as possible. There was a lot of pressure from the business community, and in many cases that was legitimate, but of course, unscrupulous actors jumped into action, and they took advantage of all those loopholes. And as I said, they were working in cahoots with unscrupulous, typically small employers in the fast food industry, by and large, to bring in people from various countries with temporary foreign worker status that were not deserving, or where the jobs didn't really exist. And that's the problem. So we don't know really, because the government is not very good at keeping statistics in a detailed fashion. We do not really know how many jobs are really fake and don't exist, and they were just created in order to give the applicant a way to obtain permanent residency in Canada. And of course, the employer is guilty, the agent is guilty of fraud, and the applicant as well. There were three parties to that fraud. They were all working together for different ends, and each one had their own objectives. The employer wanted to make some money, the agent wanted to make more money, and the applicant wanted to gain permanent residency in Canada. So we don't really.
I want to ask about the industry's reaction to the changes that the federal government announced, because I know that the restaurant industry has come out opposed. They seem to be running a campaign opposing these changes. What have they said, and what's your response to industry's reaction?
Well, I think that a lot of business people are rightly concerned that that they will not be allowed to hire these foreign workers. However, I think that they should ensure that their efforts are towards creating a program that is going to bring in only legitimate people, and it's not going to be like a free for all. So I give you a very quick example. For many, many years, cooks have been the focus of furthering activity in the temporary foreign worker program. And, people who want to bring them, they call them chefs, etc. And that's not so. They are exaggerating their qualifications and experience, and they end up being, as second-rate assistants in some, remote kitchen. And that's not what a program is for. The program is for legitimate people, legitimate business owners who have a need, and for people who have the right qualifications in order to apply for it.
Now, we've only got about 30 seconds left. What do you think the impact of these changes is going to be? Do you think we're going to see an impact quickly? Do you think Canadians are going to notice this? Or I know you said it doesn't go far enough, so do you think we'll notice it all?
I think it will be noticed only if the government goes further and attacks the largest segments, which are the postgraduate work permit holders, therefore the international student numbers, and also the open work permits that are given to refugee claimants, and they have to reduce the number of refugee claimants because now we have close to 250,000 for a system that is accustomed to only 50,000.
That's all the time we have, Sergio. I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your
Thank you
expertise.
for having me.
We've heard today about the increase in temporary foreign workers and recent changes announced by the federal government increasing restrictions on this temporary low-wage work. What do you think of the role of temporary foreign workers in Canada's economy and the seeming pendulum swings of their use? You be the judge. Thanks for watching, and remember, a freer Canada starts with you.